Hello everyone! Today I am going to be taking another fan request and I'll be discussing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I would put this in the classic category because I feel like it is one of those overlooked classics. Usually people, I think, remember the name but maybe not necessarily the substance of the film. And I think this can be put in a similar category as to The Green Mile or films like The Shawshank Redemption. It sort of has similar ideas and sort of themes going for it, just with different kinds of settings and characters. But without further ado, let me kind of discuss what One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is about and give you a sense of why I would put it into this classic category. So basically, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is actually based off of a particularly, I guess, well-recognized novel with the same name. And it follows the trials and tribulations of Randall Patrick McMurphy, who is played by Jack Nicholson. I think Jack Nicholson is also relatively young in this, and it's interesting to see him playing this kind of a character because usually he plays I guess more deranged kinds of characters, so to see him kind of maybe downplay that is kind of interesting. Although I would say that his character here is kind of intended to be a little bit out there as well. So I guess you can just take that for what it's worth. But basically, it follows his trials and tribulations going through this mental institution. Now, he's had a number of, I guess, criminal-like offenses and has had various issues at work. And so ultimately, this has led people to believe that he might have some mental problems, and so they decide to put him in this mental institution so that they can evaluate him and see if he actually has a kind of mental problem. Now, the interesting thing is the movie doesn't really focus in on that aspect at all. It largely focuses on Jack Nicholson's character and the interactions that he has with the other patients, and you kind of see how there's a anti-authoritarian sort of message going on within the film. In particular, when you see that a lot of the people that are holding high positions within the mental institution don't really understand the people that have these kinds of issues. I also think this takes place in a relatively earlier time. I would say probably within the 1960s or 50s. I would say 60s, like maybe early 60s or something like that. So they really don't have any clear, I guess, knowledge maybe of mental health as maybe scientists and researchers do today. So it seems like that they don't really know what to do with these patients that they have, and so they just give them medication. And even in the beginning of the film, Jack Nicholson's character is like, well, why do I have to take this medication? I mean, I'm just getting evaluated. And they're kind of like, well, that's just how the way things are here. And it sort of takes that tone from there, and how Jack Nicholson's character, Randall, sort of is a representation of being against that kind of authority and against that kind of strictness that the mental institution has in regards to the patients. And you'll see how, he tries to rebel against this authority by taking the patients to do recreational activities like playing or like going fishing. And then at one point he brings a ton of booze over. So he's kind of like maybe not the most, I guess, positive role model to the patients, but it does seem that he provides them with this sense of freedom and this sense of being able to actually feel um, a little bit more normal and not feel like that they are constantly being um, assessed because of their mental issues. And I think that's really the major message of the film, because you'll see how a lot of the times you have these group therapy sessions where, you know, the nurses, they sit down with all of the patients, at least the ones who can talk, and kind of go over with them their various stories that they had over the years. And you know, they try to, you know, it's kind of like a support group, sort of like, it's like going to it's like if you're dealing with alcohol, if you're dealing with drugs or whatever, you know, they have like these kinds of support groups. And basically the mental institution treats the mentally ill patients in that same regard. And you kind of see how ultimately these kinds of meetings don't really do anything, and how ultimately Jack Nicholson wants to make them feel a little bit more normal. Like, hey, he even says at one point, hey, why can't we just watch a World Series baseball game? Like, why can't we do that and change the schedule instead of you know, doing things in this very authoritarian-like way where it's very routine and nothing changes and nothing progresses out of that routine. And the nurse sort of says, well, some people are not within the mental hospital are not capable of, you know, changing quickly. And, you know, she comes back with that sort of rebuttal. But at the same time, you know, you do feel the sense of like that they treat all of their patients the same, and that they don't see that, you know, there's various other kinds of ways of dealing with the various kinds of people that are within the facility, instead of treating them all the same. And, you know, Jack Nicholson kind of tries to be that voice of kind of reason that says, hey, and question and basically being the questioner and going, well, why is it that this is a certain way and the way it is? You know, it doesn't need to be that way. We can, you know, watch a game. You know, we can be free somehow. And I think that's really, though, the heart of the movie is this whole idea of being able to be free from people's oppressions, in particular people who don't really, I guess, understand you, because they do make it seem like that the nurses and the people that are involved with taking care of the mental patients don't really understand what they're dealing with. They're just keeping these people in confinement because they're maybe afraid of what they'll do if they go out into the real world. And I think it's understandable as to why they would feel scared as to what would happen. But I think, though, there is a lot of justification to be had for the patients to have a sense of self and not feeling tied down because of their mental problems. So that's, I think, really what the heart of the film is ultimately trying to say. And I like, too, how it's kind of not a sort of good versus evil kind of thing. I mean, yes, the nurse, I think the lead nurse, I apologize, I forget her name, but the lead nurse is kind of cold-hearted and is not as friendly or open-minded, but I don't think she's necessarily supposed to be a a villain. She just doesn't really understand how to deal with these patients. She might think that she does, and I think there are certain points where she does think that she knows what to do and how to react, but I think the majority of the time she doesn't, and this kind of makes her feel, cold and maybe hopeless to maybe change their behavior or change their I guess outlook on life. So I don't think there is this sense of painting her as so much a villain as just somebody who just does not understand how to deal with the patients. And like she's kind of on that extreme of not giving them any kind of sense of freedom and whatnot. And then you have Jack Nicholson on the other hand, who's completely wild and completely deranged and crazy, and thinks he knows what's best for all of these people. So I think there is maybe a little bit of an extent where they do play up Jack Nicholson's character as sort of the hero, but I don't think that was the point. I think the point is that he represents the other side of the coin, where you're giving these people too much freedom, and then those freedoms end up ultimately having consequences. So again, it's kind of like a movie that focuses in on this kind of setting and then brings out the sort of good and the bad sort of on both ends of the spectrum. And ultimately this film is not, I think, intended to be a very uplifting film. The tone is very dark and very maybe deranged at times. And I think there are certain aspects to the film that make it different in regards to its style compared to maybe The Green Mile or Shawshank Redemption, because they do give, at least in those films, a sense of hope and a sense of optimism. This film, I don't think, really provides a sense of optimism so much as it provides a sense of a sense of the reality of the circumstances, by sort of saying, hey, there is this sense of authority, and then there's the sense of anarchy as well. So, and you can kind of take that for what it's worth, and you can ultimately see what ends up resulting in the consequences. And I think it's intended to be a more depressing-like film, so be prepared to be kind of bummed out, because this is not a film that's intended to uplift you and give you some kind of nicely bowed up, wrapped around present. It's kind of a present that's a little bit like wrapped, but wrapped in a very just unpackaged way. Like just think of it, things are, it doesn't look nicely put together. It's intended to be a film that's a little bit more, I guess, maybe down to earth, or maybe not so much down to earth, more it's a film that's focused on trying to show you sort of the depressing side of these aspects of freedom and these aspects of authority. And at the end, one does end up flying over the cuckoo's nest, but I'm not going to give away as to who does. But there is this sense of, Jack Nicholson's character in particular wanting to escape and wanting to take maybe some of the people at the mental institution with him, and you'll sort of see how that really plays into the plot and sort of the themes too. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say about this film in particular. It has received numerous awards over the years. The name is very familiar. I think a lot of people recognize the name. They may not necessarily remember what it's about, and I think it's a very clever way of approaching the title, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because although it doesn't say this title within the film, you can literally tell its meaning once you watch the film and once you realize, oh, okay, they mean that cuckoo's nest. And so that's really, though, I think, heart of the film is just this clash between this authority and this sense of anti-authority, and then what ultimate freedom results at the end. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.